Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. Ion rain hissed against Colonel Elias Voss's battle armor, tiny energy particles sparking as they struck metal. He crouched behind a shattered steel wall on Saturn's rings, eyes scanning the ravaged battlefield of the Valis 9 space outpost. Plasma bolts tore through the night sky, illuminating blackened wreckage, the remnants of an energy mining hub once humanity's pride. Now, smoke columns twisted in zero gravity, like wraiths writhing among the stars. 10 years of interstellar war with the Klythar had brought him to this moment, a desperate assault on the enemy's final stronghold, rumored to house a dark energy core, a weapon that could end the war or annihilate everything. Status report, Gamma Team. Voss growled through his comms, voice hoarse after hours commanding amidst dust and earth-shaking explosions. Static crackled in his earpiece, a whisper of space itself. Western sector secured, Colonel. Lieutenant Parker's voice came, distorted but sharp. Heavy casualties. Energy core disabled, but something's off. Voss frowned, the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. At 45, his black hair flecked with silver, his face scarred by Erebus's sandstorms and Calyx's frost. Every fallen soldier was a name etched in his mind: Jensen, dead on Mars; Harper, lost at Kuiper. Those wounds never healed. Off how? He asked, eyes fixed on a faint silhouette in the smoke. They retreated too fast, Parker replied, voice taut. Like they're luring us deeper. Voss tightened his grip on his energy rifle, fingers brushing the trigger, cold through his gloves. A trap? The Klythar never fled from fear. They calculated, waited, with alien minds and bodies adapted to any environment. 10 years of war taught him they fought for territory, resources, survival, like humans, but with colder ruthlessness. Search for survivors, he ordered, standing, his tall frame stark against the ruins. Execute Protocol 9. Protocol 9, no prisoners, no mercy. The High Command's order was as frigid as starlight. The Klythar were too dangerous to spare. But each execution cracked another piece of Voss's soul. He'd seen their silver blood spill across alien soil, wondering if they mourned their comrades as he did his own. He stepped through the desolate complex, boots crunching on debris and bodies. Human and Klythar mingled in a tableau of death. A young soldier, face barely shaved, slumped beside a plasma cannon, hands still on the trigger. A Klythar warrior, armor shattered, silver blood dried in glittering streaks, its crescent eyes staring blankly at the sky. The post-battle silence chilled him, broken only by the hiss of ion rain, a wordless dirge. But the sense of a trap clung to him. Parker was right. The Klythar didn't retreat without reason. They were waiting, and Voss felt invisible eyes watching from the dark. He signaled Delta Team, elite soldiers advancing through the northern sector. Stay sharp, he said over comms, voice low. Check every corner. If this is a trap, they won't spare us. He turned, eyes scanning a dark hallway leading deeper into the fortress. A fleeting movement, like a wraith, crossed his vision. His heart pounded, rifle raised, targeting system locking onto the void. Nothing. Just the hiss of ion rain and his own breath. But he knew something was stalking. Voss entered the central hub, once Valis 9's control core. Shattered monitors hung limp, cables sparking. A faint sound, metal clinking, made him spin, rifle aimed at the dark. Show yourself, he growled, voice echoing in the dead space. No response, but he felt a presence, like a hunter's gaze. He stepped forward, each move a challenge to the shadows. A console flared to life, red lights blinking, accompanied by an electronic whine. Colonel! Parker shouted over comms. Automated defenses are reactivating. Fall back now! Voss cursed, diving behind a pillar as wall-mounted laser turrets fired, shredding the metal floor. The Klythar had rigged a trap, not with troops but with the fortress itself. He fired at the console, an energy bolt blowing it apart, but the mechanical hum persisted deep within the complex. All teams, regroup at the rally point, he ordered, voice sharp as a blade. But as he turned, a Klythar silhouette emerged from the dark, its metallic armor glinting, crescent eyes blazing. Not a common warrior, a special forces assassin, its insignia gleaming. Voss raised his rifle, but its gaze locked onto him, not hostile but expectant. In that moment, the fortress shuddered, and darkness swallowed them. Voss navigated the ruins of Valis IX's former comms hub, where shattered monitors dangled and severed cables flickered with faint blue sparks. Debris surrounded him, twisted metal like broken limbs, the air thick with ozone and burnt smoke. A fleeting motion, swift as a specter, cut across his vision. He raised his energy rifle, helmet's targeting system locking onto a female figure half buried under a collapsed ceiling panel. Her metallic skin shimmered under dim emergency lights, tattered combat armor clinging to a slender frame, a sealed mask concealing her face, leaving only reflective glass as cold as a frozen lake at night. A Klythar assassin, Voss recognized instantly from the Special Forces insignia etched on her armor, a mark of the elite, battlefield wraiths capable of slaughtering entire squads before being noticed. Her hand clutched a long-range rifle, three-jointed fingers trembling, too weak to pull the trigger. Silver blood seeped from multiple wounds, a metal shard embedded in her shoulder, a crimson plasma burned searing her chest, pooling in a glittering puddle beneath her fragile form. She should have been dead, or at least groaning in agony, but she made no sound, no pleas, no threats. Only silence, and a piercing gaze through her mask, motionless save for the faint rise of her chest. Protocol 9 echoed in Voss's mind, eliminate immediately. His finger tightened on the trigger, a reflex honed by countless kills, quick, clean, kinder than letting her bleed out. But a cold jolt ran down his spine, freezing him. Not defiance, not fear, but a strange acceptance in her posture, as if she'd been waiting for him, as if she'd known him for years. "Colonel, sector's clear." Parker's voice cut through comms, sharp and urgent, snapping his thoughts. "Ready to extract in 20 minutes." "Copy," Voss replied, eyes never leaving the assassin. Her gaze locked onto him through the reflective glass, as if seeing through his armor through decades of war. "Found a survivor. I'll handle it." He stepped closer, rifle trained on her vulnerabilities, heart, head, neck, each step a challenge to the dark. "Do you understand me?" he asked, voice low, knowing neural translators were standard for both sides after a decade of conflict. No response, only that piercing stare, not at him but through him, into a depth he couldn't reach. Voss knelt, an arm's length away, close enough to see silver blood spreading across the floor, far enough to react if she struck. But she didn't move, only watched, her crescent eyes faint behind the mask's glass. "I'm taking you for interrogation," he said, voice low, mostly to himself. Defying direct orders, an act that could land him in a court-martial, but this encounter held a meaning he couldn't yet grasp, a missing piece in the war's puzzle. He pried the rifle from her hand, tossing it aside, the metal clanging harshly. He searched her armor for hidden weapons. A dagger strapped to her thigh, a small blinking device on her wrist, not a grenade, but a signal transmitter. He hesitated, then removed it, slipping it into his armor's pouch. "Who are you?" he asked, expecting no answer, but her gaze shifted slightly, as if the question touched something deep. A distant electronic screech echoed, followed by groaning metal. Voss spun, rifle raised, but saw only shadows and debris. When he looked back, her eyes remained fixed on him, unwavering. "Colonel, the self-destruct system's showing signs of reactivation," Parker shouted, voice frantic. "We need to move now." Voss cursed, glancing at the assassin. Protocol 9 urged him to shoot, but instinct said no. He activated his field medkit, injecting coagulant into her worst wound. "I don't know why I'm doing this," he muttered, hands working swiftly. "But I need answers." She didn't react, only watched, her breathing fading but her gaze still sharp. Suddenly, the floor trembled, a distant explosion cracking a nearby wall. "Colonel, fall back!" Parker yelled. Voss stood, intending to lift her, but she grabbed his wrist with startling strength from a near-dead body. "No!" she whispered through her translator, voice raspy, her first words. "Leave me!" He froze, but before he could respond, a laser beam shot from the dark, aimed at him. She yanked him down, shielding him with her body, the beam grazing her armor, scorching it. More silver blood seeped out, but she didn't cry out, only looked at him, her gaze conveying something unspoken. "Colonel, we're under attack!" Parker shouted. Voss dragged her to cover, firing into the dark where Klythar silhouettes emerged, their armor glinting like dead stars. He glanced at the assassin, silver blood pooling, knowing she couldn't run. "Hold on," he ordered, voice sharp, though he knew she didn't need it. He fired, each shot a flare tearing the night, but her gaze, though faint, stayed locked on him, a silent vow. Valis 9 quaked, and Voss knew this war was only beginning. The Klythar assassin lay still as Voss knelt, swiftly disarming her, prying the rifle from her trembling three-jointed hand. He examined her, eyes cold but cautious. Shards of metal pierced her shoulder and chest, a crimson plasma burn ran along her left side, smoking and cracked, hinting at internal damage. Silver blood spread, seeping into the floor's cracks, glittering under the faint red glow of emergency lights. She should have been unconscious, or at least whimpering in pain, but silence enveloped her, as if she'd mastered swallowing all suffering. Voss activated his belt's field medkit, injecting coagulant into her worst wound, hands moving with machine-like precision. "I don't know if you understand why I'm doing this," he muttered, voice low, eyes fixed on her. "But I want answers, not another corpse." She didn't respond, only stared through her cracked mask, crescent eyes glowing faintly, as if reading thoughts he hadn't voiced. He sealed the plasma burn, trying to ignore Protocol 9, the cold command echoing in his mind, eliminate immediately. But her gaze, that strange acceptance, kept his finger off the trigger. A sudden explosion shook the complex, metal screaming as if torn apart. "Colonel!" Parker's panicked voice blared through comms. "They've triggered the self-destruct. This place is gonna blow. Fall back now!" Voss cursed, abandoning first aid, grabbing his rifle. In that split-second distraction, he braced for an attack, a reflex any wounded Klythar warrior might have. But nothing. As the ceiling collapsed, steel panels and stone crashing like a tidal wave, she lunged, her slender form shielding him. He glimpsed her metallic skin glinting, her reflective mask shattering, before tons of debris engulfed them. Darkness swallowed everything, leaving only the screech of metal and his pounding heart. Pain roused him, a dull ache spreading from back to shoulder, but not fatal. Voss opened his eyes, breath heavy through his air filter. He should have been dead. The explosion was directly above, its force enough to crush anyone without reinforced armor. Emergency lights from his suit cast a red glow over a small pocket in the rubble where he lay. Beneath him was the Klythar assassin, her armor shattered, her mask cracked, revealing part of her face, metallic skin, small spines along her scalp, and crescent eyes dimmed by pain. Silver blood flowed freely from new wounds soaking the floor, but she lived, her breath so faint it was barely detectable. She'd saved him, using her body as a shield. "Why?" Voss rasped, voice raw with dust and smoke, throat parched. He propped himself up, each movement a stab through his bones. She tilted her head, a slow motion, her gaze through the broken mask carrying a deeper meaning, not just protection, but something personal, a wordless vow. He stared at her, silver blood pooling, unease rising. A Klythar assassin didn't act out of kindness. So why? "Colonel Voss, you alive?" A distant call echoed, mixed with the sound of breaking stone and rescue drills. "Here!" he shouted, voice fading in the stifling space. "Need a med team, priority 1. He turned to her, fingers checking her pulse, weak, but there. "Hold on," he ordered, unsure if she heard. He activated his armor's distress beacon, its light flickering in the dark. The rescue team arrived fast, their helmet lights piercing the gloom. "Colonel!" Parker rushed forward, face smeared with dust, eyes widening at the assassin. She's alive? Prioritize her," Voss commanded, voice sharp, standing despite the pain making him grit his teeth. "She saved my life." Parker hesitated, glancing at her, suspicion in his eyes. But Protocol 9, overruled. Voss snapped, voice like steel. He faced the rescue team, their faces weary and shocked. She's not a typical enemy. Get her on a stretcher, treat her like one of ours. A young corporal, a scar across his cheek, muttered. She's Klythar. The ones who butchered Bravo team. Voss turned, eyes like blades. I know who she is, he said, voice low but heavy. And I know what she did. If we kill someone who saved a comrade, what separates us from the monsters? Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of ion rain outside. The team worked, lifting her onto a stretcher, silver blood dripping to the floor. As they moved out, an explosion rocked the ground. Ambush! Parker yelled, as Klythar's silhouettes emerged from the dark, armor glinting, plasma weapons blazing like dead stars. Voss dove to shield the stretcher, firing back, each shot tearing the night. Amid the chaos, he saw her, near death, struggling to reach a device on her wrist, a green light flickering. Cease fire! He roared, realizing it was a signal, not a weapon. But to whom? His team repelled the enemy, but the question haunted Voss as they boarded the transport, Valis 9 crumbling behind them. In minutes, the rescue team drilled through the rubble, helmet lights sweeping twisted metal, pulling Voss and the Klythar assassin from the suffocating dark. He staggered to his feet, pain stabbing his shoulder and back, but he ignored it, eyes fixed on the stretcher where she lay. Silver blood coated the metal surface, shimmering under faint emergency lights, but she remained silent, her crescent eyes dim through the mask's cracks, locked on him like an unspoken question. Prioritize her, Voss ordered, voice sharp, as Parker approached, face smeared with dust, eyes flickering between concern and doubt. She saved my life. Parker hesitated, lips pressed tight. Sir, Protocol 9. He glanced at the assassin, hand gripping his rifle, as if expecting her to leap up and attack. Overruled. Voss cut him off, voice cold as steel, leaving no room for debate. She's not a typical enemy. The surrounding soldiers, faces etched with fatigue and loss, exchanged confused glances. Some showed open hostility, shoulders tense, rifles lowered but ready. She's Klythar, Corporal Reyes muttered, voice bitter, a scar slashing his cheek vivid under plasma light. The ones who slaughtered Bravo team at Mars Belt. My brother! He stopped, swallowing pain, eyes flashing hatred. Voss turned, gaze like a blade. I know who she is, he said, voice low but resonant, echoing across the ruined battlefield where ion rain still hissed. And I know what she did. He stepped forward, facing his team, his tall frame stark against the wreckage. If we kill someone who saved a comrade, what separates us from the monsters we fight? What are we defending, if not our own humanity? A heavy silence fell, broken only by the hiss of ion rain and the distant roar of the transport's engines. Voss saw the soldier's eyes waver, doubt, confusion, and perhaps, in a few, the first seeds of change sprouting in hearts hardened by war. Reyes lowered his head, hand gripping his rifle, silent. Parker took a deep breath, nodding slightly, accepting, however reluctantly. Stabilize her for transport. Voss ordered the medics, voice uncompromising. Treat her like one of ours. That's a direct order. The medics worked quickly, injecting stabilizers, bandaging wounds, but their eyes darted to her warily, as if she might become a threat any moment. Silver blood dripped from the stretcher, soaking Valis 9's dirt, a reminder of her alienness. As they lifted the stretcher onto the transport, an explosion shook the ground, dust and debris flying. Ambush! Parker shouted, rifle raised as dozens of Klythar emerged from the dark, metallic armor glinting under plasma light, weapons blazing like dead stars. Voss dove to shield the stretcher, firing fiercely, each shot a flare ripping the night. His team reacted instantly, forming a defensive ring, but the enemy moved swiftly, like wraiths, plasma blades flashing in the dark. In the chaos, Voss glimpsed the assassin, despite her wounds, struggling to raise her hand, three-jointed fingers trembling toward a small device on her armor. A faint green light blinked. Cease fire! he roared, realizing it wasn't a weapon but a signal transmitter. But to whom? The Klythar seemed to notice, one lunging at the stretcher, blade aimed at her. Voss fired, an energy bolt piercing its chest, dropping it, but the signal's mystery gnawed at him. His team repelled the assault, Klythar bodies scattered, silver blood mingling with dust. The transport roared, launching into space, leaving Valis 9 to collapse in flames. Voss sat by the stretcher, eyes fixed on the assassin. She was unconscious, her breath so faint it barely registered, but her crescent eyes, though dim, seemed to speak. He touched the signal device in his armor's pouch, fingers tightening. "What game are you playing?" he whispered, expecting no answer. The ship headed for Orion 7 station, stars glinting through the window, but Voss felt a chill. That signal, a plea for help, a trap, or something else? He looked at her, silver blood dried on the stretcher, knowing the answers lay within her, hidden behind the shattered mask and eyes that never left him. 10 years of war had taught him to distrust everything, but now, he wasn't sure if he faced an enemy or something far deeper. The ship hummed as it entered orbit, and Voss gripped his rifle, ready for what awaited. 3 days had passed, and Voss stood in the observation room of Orion 7's military hospital, the cold white light from overhead lamps casting a sterile glow through the one-way glass, bathing the Klythar assassin in an ethereal sheen. She lay on a medical bed, sensor cables wrapped around her slender frame, her metallic skin glinting like a meteor shower, highlighting a tapestry of old and new scars, a map of war etched into flesh. Multiple surgeries had stabilized her, but she remained unconscious, her breath so faint the medical monitors barely registered it. Voss clenched his fists, his gaze unwavering, as if he could wrest answers from her silence. "Tell me about the old wounds," he requested, voice low, turning to Dr. Ramirez, a woman with prematurely silver hair and eyes sharp as a scalpel. Ramirez scrolled through her tablet, her tone flat, devoid of emotion. "As previously reported, her body bears numerous injuries, healed plasma burns covering 30% of her frame, countless bullet and shrapnel scars, 2 ribs poorly fused, evidence of field surgery. Some wounds date back 8 years, others are mere months old." 8 years. Nearly the entirety of the Interstellar War. Voss frowned, unease rising like a tidal undercurrent. "Bioaugmentations?" he asked, voice hushed, eyes still fixed on the assassin. "Enhanced musculature, a reinforced skeleton with an unidentified alloy, and recovery capabilities far beyond any human," Ramirez replied, her fingers pausing on the tablet. "This is black market tech, not standard Klythar military issue. Someone invested heavily to make her near invincible. Or to keep her fighting through any injury." Voss muttered, his gaze tracing her old scars, as if they held a story he couldn't yet read. Black market tech? She wasn't just a Klythar soldier, she was something else. "Identification profile?" he asked, turning to Intelligence Officer Carter, a gaunt man whose data glasses flickered with light across his pale face. Carter shook his head, adjusting his glasses. "Nothing concrete, sir. Her armor bears Klythar Special Forces insignia, but the serials don't match any records in our database. Fingerprints, DNA, retinal scans, all negative. Stranger still, we found traces of deliberately erased identification codes, as if she intentionally wiped her past, becoming a complete ghost." "A ghost?" Voss whispered, the word heavy as shattered metal. "Not just an assassin, but a warrior with a purpose, operating in the shadows for reasons he couldn't grasp." He recalled her crescent eyes, the strange acceptance when she shielded him on Valis 9. Why? A Klythar didn't act out of kindness, yet she'd saved him, not once but twice. "What about the signal device she activated during the ambush?" he asked, voice low, his hand instinctively brushing the pouch where he kept it. Carter frowned, scrolling his tablet, blue light reflecting off his glasses. "The signal's encrypted at a level beyond our current decryption capabilities. But it wasn't sent to any known Klythar forces. It's possible it went to a third party, not mainstream Klythar, not us." Voss felt a chill race down his spine, as if the room's pressure had suddenly dropped. A third party? Who was behind her, and why had she saved him? He looked through the glass, his eyes tracing her body, the small spines along her scalp, a unique Klythar trait, and the freshest scar where medics had stitched her plasma burn. What does she know? He asked, gaze unwavering. What makes her so important that the Klythar would ambush Valis 9? Carter adjusted his glasses, voice hesitant. We don't know yet, sir. But the signal, it wasn't just a distress call. It could be a message or a command. We need time to analyze. Time, Voss echoed, voice bitter. Time was a luxury he didn't have. High Command was already questioning his decision to bring her to Orion 7, defying Protocol 9. One more misstep, and he could lose everything: rank, honor, even freedom. Ramirez interjected, her voice calm but sharp. She may wake within 24 hours, barring complications. But I must warn you, Colonel, her body is strong, but her will is stronger. She woke briefly during surgery, reaching for her mask, as if it mattered more than her life. Voss nodded slightly, his gaze returning to the assassin. The mask, reflective glass hiding her identity, but also a symbol. Of what? Secrets? Duty? Or a vow? He left the observation room, the signal device in his pouch heavy as a warning. Orion 7 hummed around him, the drone of machinery and soldiers' footsteps echoing in metal corridors. But Voss felt an invisible pressure, as if her crescent eyes still followed him, piercing glass and shadow. Who was she, and why had she chosen him? The answers, he knew, lay in her silver blood and scars, waiting to be unveiled. Voss entered Orion 7's command room, his mind a swirling nebula of unanswered questions, each one sinking deeper into his clenched fists. Blue light from screens bathed his scarred face, highlighting weary but razor-sharp features. He issued orders to Intelligence Officer Carter and the analysis team, his voice low but unyielding. Review my entire combat record for the past 8 years. Focus on unexplained survivals. Carter pushed up his data glasses, doubt flickering in his eyes. That's thousands of hours of data, sir. Millions of report lines. Then start now. Voss snapped, voice like steel, leaving no room for debate. Look for anomalies, enemy fire missing inexplicably, Klythar equipment failing at critical moments, or attackers eliminated before they could strike. Carter nodded slightly, fingers flying across his tablet, though his eyes held a trace of hesitation. Voss ignored it, sitting before the central screens, their flickering light reflecting in his eyes, where a storm of suspicion brewed. He pulled up footage from a battle at Mars Belt, 6 years prior. His team was ambushed in a cosmic dust cloud, 40 soldiers lost, their bodies drifting among ship debris. Voss stood at the epicenter yet survived. Helmet cam footage showed Klythar plasma fire missing by millimeters, as if deflected by an unseen hand. He slowed the playback, heart pounding as he spotted a faint silhouette, metallic armor glinting, darting at the frame's edge, vanishing before the system could lock on. He switched to another battle, on Erebus, 3 years ago. A Klythar sniper targeted him from an icy ridge, but the rifle malfunctioned, its barrel smoking. When his team searched, they found the sniper's body with a precise stab to its neural core, a strike not from his soldiers. Battle after battle, a pattern emerged, like puzzle pieces in a war's tapestry. Someone had protected him, neutralizing threats before he knew they existed. In grainy recon images, a Klythar armored figure appeared, always at the frame's edge, moving too fast to be seen, a perpetual ghost haunting hundreds of battlefields. Voss paused, hand trembling as he zoomed in on an image from the Calyx battle, 4 years ago. The figure, though blurry, bore the same Special Forces insignia as the assassin in the hospital. He magnified further, screen light illuminating his face, where shock and suspicion mingled. The insignia, an etched arc with 3 sharp spines, was unmistakable. "How long has she followed me?" he whispered, voice fading in the command room's silence. The thought that a Klythar, an elite assassin, had silently guarded him through hundreds of battles, from the war's earliest days, chilled his blood. He replayed another clip, from an ambush at Kuiper's Belt. A plasma grenade aimed at his team detonated prematurely, killing its Klythar throwers. Reports called it equipment failure, but now Voss doubted. He found a recon report from Tarsys, where he'd pacified a Klythar settlement. A similar figure, in Special Forces armor, appeared in a long-range photo, standing on a hill, watching his team withdraw. She was there, even then. "Who is she?" he muttered, fingers brushing the screen, as if he could touch the ghost. Carter looked up from his station. "Sir, we found another anomaly. In the Calyx battle, a Klythar comms system was disabled just before your team attacked. No signs of our hacking." Voss nodded, but his mind drifted, back to Valis 9, to her crescent eyes locking onto him through a shattered mask. Why? A Klythar didn't protect an enemy, didn't risk their life for a human. Yet she had repeatedly. He stood, eyes sweeping the command room, where screens still flickered with data. Her signal device, still in his pouch, felt like a heavy reminder. A third party, Carter had said. But who? Renegades? Zealots of some cause? Or a greater force, lurking in the war's shadows? The answers, he suspected, lay behind her reflective mask, in the silver blood and scars narrating a decade of war. He left the command room, footsteps echoing in metal corridors, resolved to uncover the truth, wherever it led. Orion 7 shuddered as a transport docked, but Voss didn't notice. He headed for the hospital, where the assassin lay, knowing her awakening would change everything, or destroy it all. On the fifth day, the Klythar assassin awoke. Voss stood in the observation room, cold white light streaming through the one-way glass, casting a lifeless glow over her. Her eyes opened, crescent pupils blazing, and her three-jointed fingers instantly reached for where her mask had been, removed during surgery. Finding it gone, her body tensed, head snapping to scan the room with a hunter's speed. Her gaze locked onto the glass, as if she knew exactly where Voss stood, piercing through glass and shadow. "I'm going in," he said, voice low, ignoring the nurse's protest beside him. In the medical bay, she sat upright, spine rigid as steel, three-fingered hands resting neatly on her thighs, steady despite the bandages and sensors covering her. Without the mask, her face was exposed, metallic skin shimmering under the lights, large eyes with crescent pupils glowing like meteors, no hair, but small spines along her scalp quivering, perhaps a unique Klythar sensory organ. She watched him enter, unsurprised, unafraid, as if she'd awaited this moment for years, as if their time on Valis 9 was merely a pause in her plan. "You know who I am," Voss said, not a question but a statement, voice low but firm, eyes fixed on her for any sign. She nodded faintly, a barely perceptible confirmation, reluctant. "You've followed me, protected me for years," he continued, each word heavy, built on clues from battle records, his inexplicable survivals, the ghostly figures in recon photos. Another nod, this one hesitant, as if weighing something, her crescent eyes flickering. "Why?" The question hung in the still air of the bay, sharp as a plasma blade. She opened her mouth, then closed it, throat moving as if speaking were alien, an effort to break through a thick shell of silence. Finally, a raspy, distorted voice came through her neural translator. "Debt." The word landed like a shard of metal, heavy, carrying a depth Voss couldn't yet fathom. He pulled a chair closer, sitting, eyes never leaving her face, searching for the slightest clue, a blink, a tilt of her head. "We've met before," he ventured, instinct growing stronger, like a current through his spine. Her gaze dropped to her three-fingered hands, slender yet powerful, then rose to meet his, so intense it unsettled him, as if she saw something in him he'd forgotten. "Long ago," she confirmed, each word slow, deliberate, as if dredging memories for the right ones. "You don't remember? Tell me," Voss ordered, voice firm but not hostile, eyes locked on hers. She tilted her head, a gesture he recognized from Valis 9, when she'd shielded him in the rubble. "The settlement," she said, voice hoarse, each word drawn from a deep place. "Tarsys. Civilians." Voss felt a chill, as if the room's pressure had dropped. Tarsys. He tried to bury that name in his mind's darkest corners, but it always returned, a wound that never healed. Images flashed, red dust, crude stone houses, Klythar farmers with calloused hands, children hiding behind parents, and High Command's cold order. No witnesses. He misreported, letting some villagers escape, but Tarsys' cost still weighed on him, like wraiths that never left. The girl, he whispered, memories flooding like a tidal wave. Her eyes lit up, surprise mingled with relief, as if she hadn't expected him to recall. You were that girl, he continued, the impossible truth crystallizing, sharp and staggering. She nodded, almost eagerly, her hands clenching, as if that memory tethered her to him. You saw me, she said, voice clearer though still hoarse. Raised your rifle, then lowered it. Told me to run, not to look back. A cave to the north, you said? Where I could hide. Voss swallowed hard, throat parched. I reported you dead, he said, voice trembling as he realized that small act had changed everything. How did you go from there to here? Her expression hardened, eyes flashing with resolve. I followed, she said. Learned your language, your fighting, your technology. Became what I needed to repay the debt. She touched her side, where Voss knew bioaugmentations lay. A debt must be paid. You gave me life. I kept you alive. Voss shook his head, reeling at the truth's scale. But why not just thank me? Why dedicate your life to protecting an enemy? Her eyes sharpened, like a plasma blade slicing darkness. Not just debt, she said, voice low but fierce. You're different. You question. You change. I saw you save others like me. Your hope for peace. Her words pierced the darkness in Voss's mind, a light through 10 years of war. She didn't just repay a debt, she saw in him a chance to end the cycle of hatred between their species. He sat silent, her crescent eyes locked on him, a vow without words. The bay was still, but outside, Voss knew, a storm was coming. Tarsys, she repeated, her hoarse voice crackling through the translator, the name hitting Voss like a fist to the chest, tearing open the scars of memories he'd tried to bury. The dusty red planet surfaced in his mind, crude stone houses, sand clinging to his boots, and the terrified eyes of Klythar villagers, not warriors, but farmers, artisans, families with children hiding behind parents. He remembered the pacification campaign vividly, one of his first as a captain at 35, when the fire of duty still burned in his chest, believing High Command's orders were truth. They'd labeled Tarsys a Klythar rebel base, a threat to be eradicated. But when his team arrived, there were no weapons, no comms, no signs of military activity, only rough hands carving starstone statues, green fabric fluttering in the dusty wind, and crescent eyes wide with horror. Voss had reported over comms, voice tense, requesting new orders, hoping for leniency. But the response was cold, sharp as a plasma blade. No witnesses. He couldn't defy orders openly, not then, when his career and loyalty to humanity were everything, when a misstep could mean a court-martial. But he'd mitigated, deliberately misinterpreting, signaling his team to slow, letting some villagers slip through mountain crevices. He falsified body counts, hiding those who vanished into the dark. Yet Tarsys haunted him, a scar that never healed, a reminder of blind loyalty's cost. Then a moment crystallized, an image etched in his mind, unerasable. The girl in the storage bunker, Voss whispered, memories surging like a tsunami, drowning him in red dust and smoke. Her eyes lit up, surprise and relief mingling, as if she hadn't expected him to remember, as if that moment was part of her very being. You were that girl, he continued, the unbelievable truth sharpening, raw and painful. No older than 10, hiding behind metal crates, clutching a green cloth, crescent eyes wide with fear. She nodded, almost eagerly, her 3-fingered hands clenching, as if holding that memory tight. You saw me, she said, voice hoarse but clearer, each word drawn from a deep well. Raised your rifle, then lowered it. Told me to run, not to look back. A cave to the north, you said? Where I could hide. Voss swallowed, throat dry. I reported you dead, he said, voice trembling as he realized that small act of mercy had altered everything, not just for her, but for him. A fleeting moment of compassion, defying orders, had forged an invisible thread binding their fates across a decade of war. How did you go from there to here? Her expression hardened, eyes flashing with resolve, replacing a fleeting vulnerability. I followed, she said, voice low, each word heavy as metal. Learned your ways, language, combat, technology. Became what I needed to repay the debt. She touched her side, where Voss knew complex black market augmentations lay, turning her into a war machine. A debt must be paid. You gave me life. I kept you alive. Voss shook his head, staggered by the truth's magnitude. A Klythar girl, a survivor of a massacre, had devoted her life to protecting him, not through one battle but hundreds, from Mars to Calyx, Erebus to Kuiper. But why not just thank me? He asked, voice faltering. Why dedicate your life to protecting an enemy? Her eyes sharpened, like a plasma blade cutting through darkness. Not just debt, she said, voice low but fierce, a vow. You're different. You question. You change. I saw you defy orders, save others like me. Your hope for peace. Her words were a beacon, piercing the darkness of Voss's mind, dispelling a decade of war's fog. She didn't just repay a debt, she saw in him a spark for the future, a chance to end the cycle of hatred between their species. He sat silent, her crescent eyes locked on him, unwavering, a promise without words. The bay was still, but Voss felt the storm approaching, from high command, from the Klythar, from the truth unfolding. The Tarsys girl. He whispered, the name heavy as the green cloth in his memory. She tilted her head, a faint smile flickering, almost imperceptible, but enough to make his heart race. You remember, she said, and for the first time, her voice held a trace of warmth, like a star's light through cosmic dark. A week later, an urgent alert from High Command shattered Orion 7's silence like a plasma bolt tearing through darkness. Voss stood in the command room, screen light bathing his scarred face, as Intelligence Officer Carter reported, his pale face taut, voice faltering. A Klythar fleet is approaching, sir. An unprecedented force, their target clear, the medical bay where she's recovering. Voss felt a chill, as if the surrounding space had frozen, air draining from his lungs. They know she's here. Carter continued, pushing up his glasses, eyes anxious. The signal she sent during the Valis 9 ambush. It may have exposed our position. That signal. The small device, blinking green, still in Voss's armor pouch, now felt like a curse. Who had she called? He strode swiftly through metal corridors, boots echoing, heading straight for the medical bay. The Klythar assassin sat on her bed, spine rigid, crescent eyes blazing despite her weakened body, bandages tied around her shoulder and chest. She looked at him as he entered, unsurprised, as if she'd sensed his approach from afar. The signal. Voss demanded, voice hard as steel, eyes locked on her. Who did you call? She met his gaze, unflinching, unafraid, as if death were an old companion. Not Klythar, she said, voice hoarse but certain, each word measured. Those like me. Those who belong to no side. Voss frowned, grappling with her words, like sifting through shadows. What do you mean? A third party? She nodded faintly, a slow motion, eyes never leaving him. We are renegades. She explained, voice low, like recounting an ancient secret. Klythar, but not serving war. We seek peace, to end this cycle of destruction. The signal was a plea, to let them know I'm alive. Voss clenched his fist, the signal device burning through his armor's pouch. But it was intercepted. He said, voice heavy, each word pressing on his chest. The Orthodox Klythar are coming, and they want you dead. She tilted her head, crescent eyes sharp as a blade reflecting starlight. Then I fight. She said simply, voice firm as starstone, without hesitation. As always. Before Voss could respond, Orion 7 shuddered violently, the first explosions from the Klythar fleet making metal corridors scream, as if clawed by invisible talons. Alarms wailed, red lights flashing across the station. Voss activated his comms, issuing orders instantly. Evacuate civilians. Deploy defenses. All units to positions. But she grabbed his arm, the strength in her three-fingered hand halting him, despite her wounded body. I go with you, she said, voice resolute, eyes blazing like unquenchable fire. You need me. Voss shook his head, struggling to keep his voice calm as his heart raced. You're a prisoner, and not recovered. Stay here. 10 years. She cut in, crescent eyes locking onto him, both steadfast and desperate, a vow unbreakable. 10 years I protected you, from Tarsys to Valis 9. This is the last time. Don't deny me. Voss wanted to argue, to order her to stay, but those eyes, a blend of resolve and deep pain, silenced him. He remembered Tarsys, the girl with the green cloth, and the ghost who saved him through countless battles. He nodded, heart heavy, as if carrying her death already. Fine, he said, voice low. But you move your way. No one can know you're here. She nodded slightly, a faint smile flickering under her crescent eyes, barely noticeable but enough to send a chill down Voss's spine. She stood, slow but steady, ripping off sensor cables, silver blood seeping from reopened wounds. Voss handed her a dagger from his belt, its steel glinting in the white light. Take this, he said. But if you betray us, I'll end you myself. She took the dagger, three-fingered hand gripping the hilt, eyes never leaving him. I don't betray, she said, voice low, like a promise carved in stone. The station shook again, explosions closer, corridors cracking. Voss turned, leading the counterattack, but he felt her behind him, a silent ghost, ready to melt into the dark. The Klythar fleet had arrived, and Voss knew this battle wasn't just for Orion 7, but for the truth hidden in her silver blood. Metal screeched as a bay door opened, and Voss charged into the corridor, energy rifle in hand, her shadow gliding behind, a ghost never far from his side. The battle for Orion 7 erupted like a cosmic nightmare, plasma flashes and explosions blending into a lethal symphony. Klythar warships breached the defenses, deploying troops into the station's metal corridors, their metallic armored silhouettes darting like wraiths, plasma weapons tearing through steel and flesh. Voss led the counterattack, moving swiftly through smoke-filled halls, his energy rifle firing white-hot bolts, each shot a cold calculation from a seasoned veteran. But he quickly realized the enemy's true target, the medical bay, where they believed the Klythar assassin was held. They want her dead. Lieutenant Parker shouted over comms, voice breaking amid the station's shaking blasts. She knows something, Colonel. Voss gritted his teeth, gunning down a charging Klythar warrior, its body collapsing, silver blood pooling on the floor. In the chaos, he lost sight of the assassin. She'd left the medical bay, blending into Orion 7's shadows, moving like an invisible blade. But he felt her presence, a ghost haunting the battlefield, leaving Klythar bodies scattered, each death the result of a perfect stab or shot, chillingly precise. He raced through a narrow corridor, his team behind him, when a Klythar assassin squad ambushed the command room. A plasma blade flashed, its green glow centimeters from Voss's heart. He raised his rifle, knowing he was too late. Then, like lightning, a figure surged from the dark, felling the attacker in a blur of motion. The Klythar assassin stood before him, armor tattered, silver blood streaking her body, dripping to the floor, but her crescent eyes burned, an unquenchable flame. You shouldn't be here. Voss growled, firing at another enemy, his bolt shredding its armor. She tilted her head, eyes glinting, as if smiling through her shattered mask. Always here, she replied, voice hoarse, distorted through her translator. She pulled him from the command room, leading through smoke-filled corridors and debris, moving with the familiarity of one who knew every shadow of war. You need to know, she said, voice urgent, each word forced from a wounded chest. I carry data, maps of Klythar's secret bases, their war plans. Enough to force peace talks. Voss froze, steps faltering for a second, eyes locking onto her. Where's the data? She touched her chest, where a small scar hid under tattered armor, above her heart. In me. Implanted chip. That's why they hunt me. He wanted to ask more, to understand how a girl from Tarsys carried secrets to end a war, but a nearby explosion interrupted, shaking the floor, metal shards flying. The Klythar had breached the final defenses, advancing on the station's energy core, Orion 7's heart, where a blast could erase everything. Hold them! Voss shouted over comms, ordering his team to stand firm, but his eyes stayed on her. She stood tall, gripping the dagger he'd given her, silver blood seeping from new wounds, but her crescent eyes never wavered. I'll lead, she said, voice low, a vow. The core. They can't reach it. Voss nodded, heart heavy. He knew she wasn't healed, knew each step defied death, but her eyes, the eyes of the Tarsys girl, the ghost of a decade's battles, left him no choice. They charged through the corridor, she moving ahead, swift as a spectre, felling a Klythar warrior with a dagger to the throat before it could raise its weapon. Voss fired support, each shot a flare in the dark, but he couldn't help marveling at her. A war machine, yet a being carrying hope for peace. A Klythar squad blocked their path, plasma weapons blazing, but she dove in, dagger flashing, dropping two before they could react. Silver blood sprayed, soaking her armor, but she didn't stop. This way! She shouted, pointing to a side corridor leading to the core. But as they neared, a larger figure emerged, a high-ranking Klythar warrior, armor etched with command insignia, wielding a long plasma sword. You betrayed us, Lirien! It roared, voice distorted through its translator, crescent eyes locked on her. Voss raised his rifle, but she held up a hand, eyes sharp as blades. He's mine! She said, voice cold, and for the first time, Voss heard her name, Lirien. The station trembled, explosions nearing, but Voss knew this fight wasn't just about the core. It was about Lirien, the data within her, and the fragile thread between their species, hanging on the edge of life and death. Orion 7 quaked like a dying beast, each explosion a final heartbeat. Voss and Lirien fell back to the energy core's chamber, where technicians battled smoke and fire to activate the self-destruct, preventing Klythar capture. Corridors were choked with dust and plasma glow, metal screaming as walls tore apart, debris flying like a meteor shower. A Klythar Special Forces team, in heavy armor etched with elite insignia, blocked their path, advanced weapons blazing, green light reflecting off cold metallic faces. Lirien hurled herself into the fray like a whirlwind, her three-fingered hand wielding the dagger in a deadly dance. She felled one enemy with a throat stab, spun to dodge a plasma sword, then drove her blade into another's chest, all in seconds. But each new wound slowed her, silver blood streaming, soaking the metal floor, glinting like fallen stars. Voss fired support, his energy bolts shredding enemy armor, but his eyes stayed on her. He saw her stumble, a plasma slash grazing her shoulder, opening a fresh wound, yet she stood, crescent eyes blazing, defying the universe. They reached the core, a vast chamber where the reactor glowed, its hum a war anthem. The chief technician, face smeared with oil and blood, shouted over the noise. Self-destruct in 3 minutes! Evacuate now! But the Klythar team had caught up, their silhouettes filling the corridor, weapons like dead stars. Voss raised his rifle, bracing for the final stand, but Lirien turned to him, crescent eyes dimming with pain yet resolute, a vow unbreakable. You must live, she said, voice faint, distorted through her translator, but each word sharp as a blade. The data, in me. Take it! Before he could react, she shoved him toward a nearby escape pod, her trembling three-fingered hand activating the control panel, red lights flashing as the door locked. No! Voss roared, pounding the glass, trying to pull her with him, but her strength, even in exhaustion, was beyond human. She forced him inside, sealing the door from outside, her crescent eyes locking onto him through the glass. Through the pod's window, Voss saw her turn to face the Klythar team alone, silver blood staining her tattered armor. She removed her mask, revealing her metallic face, scalp spines quivering, crescent eyes blazing one last time, like stars refusing to fade. Remember me, she whispered over comms, her voice soft yet steely, a farewell etched into the cosmos. The Tarsys girl. She charged the enemy, dagger flashing like lightning, taking down 3 Klythar before being overwhelmed. A plasma sword pierced her chest, silver blood spraying, but she stood, striking back, felling another before collapsing. The core's explosion engulfed everything, white light swallowing her silhouette, erasing the corridor in a radiant instant. Voss's escape pod launched, the force pinning him to the seat, carrying him from the nightmare, but his heart was heavy, as if bearing her death. He drifted in space, stars glinting through the pod's window, but they felt like a cold void. Lirien, the Tarsys girl, the battlefield ghost, who'd spent 10 years protecting him, had sacrificed herself so he could live, so her data could end the war. He clenched his fists, as if to hold her final image, crescent eyes blazing, metallic face defying death. A rescue ship found him hours later, pulling the pod into its bay. Lieutenant Parker, face scratched, approached, handing him a small object, a data chip, its surface shimmering, still flecked with dried silver blood. "Found in the wreckage," Parker said, voice low. "She kept her word." Voss took the chip, fingers trembling as they touched the blood, a reminder of Lirien's vow. He nodded, silent, eyes fixed on the chip, holding maps of Klythar bases, war plans, and the hope for peace she'd died for. Orion 7 was now debris drifting in the void, but Voss knew the war wasn't over. He stood, chip clutched tight, eyes cold as steel. Lirien had given him a chance to change the fate of 2 species, and he wouldn't let her sacrifice be in vain. "Tarsys girl," he whispered, a promise, as the rescue ship sped toward distant stars. 3 months later, Elias Voss, no longer a colonel, stood silently before a simple monument on a green hill overlooking New Seattle, the city's lights twinkling under Earth's sky like captive stars. The monument, a black stone pillar inscribed with "To the Nameless," in human and Klythar script, stood tall, a tribute to Lirien, the Klythar assassin who'd altered the war's course. The data from the chip implanted in her body, steeped in silver blood, had exposed Klythar's secret bases, war plans, and atrocities committed by both sides. Those truths, sharp as plasma blades, forced humanity and Klythar to the negotiating table, ending a decade of conflict not with victory, but with a fragile, hopeful treaty. Voss resigned after the treaty was signed, publicly revealing the truth about Tarsys and other pacification campaigns in a report sent to both species. His actions shook the military, prompting some former comrades, those who'd stood with him through fire and smoke, to brand him a traitor, their voices bitter. But others, like Lieutenant Parker, began questioning the orders they blindly followed, their eyes wavering, seeking light in war's darkness. The monument became a symbol of compassion transcending species, with a green cloth from Tarsys at its base, preserved in a glass case like a sacred relic, fluttering in the breeze as a reminder of the girl who changed everything. Each morning, Voss came here, standing before the stone, sometimes whispering to Lirien as if she could hear across the stars. "Your data changed everything," he said today, fingers brushing the glass, touching the green cloth, feeling Tarsys' memory resurface. The girl with crescent eyes, the battlefield ghost, the white light swallowing her on Orion 7. "But the cost was too high. I wish I could have saved you." He stood, dawn gilding the hill, the breeze carrying the scent of fresh grass and New Seattle's faint hum below. His personal device buzzed softly, an encrypted signal from an unknown source. Voss frowned, pulling it out, the screen flashing green with a brief message. "The Tarsys girl lives. Find us." His heart pounded, threatening to break his ribs. Lirien alive? Or was this a trap, a scheme by those seeking to unravel the treaty, forces in the shadows still craving war? He looked at the green cloth, eyes harder than ever, like steel forged in fire. Lirien, the Tarsys girl, the ghost who'd guarded him for a decade, who'd died for peace, couldn't be alive. He'd seen her fall, silver blood pooling, the core's light erasing her. But this message, true or false, was a door to the dark, and Voss wasn't one to turn from truth. He left the monument, descending the hill, the green cloth in its case a reminder of the compassion that reshaped 2 species. In his pocket, he carried a decrypted copy of the chip's data, a vow to Lirien. New Seattle sprawled before him, skyscrapers and hovercraft weaving through the sky, but Voss saw none of its beauty. His mind had left Earth, drifting to the stars, where answers about Lirien might await. He reached a small cafe in the suburbs, where the encrypted contact requested a meet. The dim space smelled of coffee, old speakers playing classical music. A figure sat in the corner, cloaked, face hidden under a hood. Voss sat opposite, hand near a concealed dagger, eyes scanning for ambush signs. "Speak," he ordered, voice low, emotionless. The figure looked up, revealing a human face, but eyes cold, as if they'd seen too much war. "The Tarsys girl," they said, voice a near whisper. "She's one of us, renegades, seekers of peace. She didn't die on Orion 7. We saved her, but she's not the same." Voss clenched his fist, heart racing, but kept his voice steady. "Where is she?" They shook their head. "Not that simple, Voss. She carries secrets beyond the data you used. Klythar and humans both want her for what she knows. If you want to find her, join us." Voss met their gaze, seeing truth laced with danger. He thought of Lirien, the green cloth, Tarsys, and knew his journey wasn't over. He stood, eyes sharp as steel. "Lead the way," he said, stepping out, ready to face any darkness to find the Tarsys girl.